Hello everyone. Today I want to share something very personal with you. My journey through loneliness in marriage. It's a topic that isn't often talked about openly, but it's important to shed light on it. So let's dive into what causes loneliness in marriage and how it manifests. From my own experience, loneliness in marriage can be particularly challenging because it contrasts sharply with the expectation of companionship and support that a marital relationship is supposed to provide. There are many signs of loneliness that I will talk about in this video. One of the first signs of loneliness in my marriage was emotional withdrawal. My spouse and I started avoiding meaningful interactions and discussions. I remember evenings where we would sit in the same room, but it felt like we were worlds apart. We would be on our phones or watching TV, barely exchanging words. This emotional withdrawal grew into lack of communication. Another significant factor was emotional disconnection. Over time, we stopped putting effort into maintaining our emotional bond. Life got busy. I was technically raising my kids alone, doing all the chores whilst he worked. This led us to take each other for granted. Emotional intimacy requires continuous nurturing, but when it's neglected, it leads to a deep sense of loneliness. I often felt like we were roommates rather than partners, just going through the motions of daily life without any emotional connection. Unresolved conflicts also played a huge role. Instead of addressing our issues head-on, we avoided confrontation. This avoidance led to suppressed feelings and growing resentment, making the emotional gap even wider. I remember many times when I felt unheard and unsupported, as if my feelings didn't matter. This only added to my sense of isolation. Generally, I am the one who brought things up while my husband avoided all discussions. Sometimes he would just apologize so there was peace. But deep down for me, these things were not resolved. Arguments upon arguments were not fully resolved, leading to resentment. Life changes contributed to my loneliness too. Our interests and priorities started to diverge as we grew. We ended up leading parallel lives instead of a shared one. This made me feel like we no longer had common ground. For instance, while he was deeply involved in his career, I was focused on raising the kids. For the most part, I felt like a single parent. This divergence created a sense of distance between us. Physical separation due to work commitments added to the loneliness. Long periods apart strained our relationship. He was working on his computer all the time, sometimes past midnight. Often there was a lack of physical presence and shared experiences. Sometimes I would talk to him and he was so preoccupied that he wouldn't really engage. I often felt alone even when we were in the same room, which was heartbreaking. Seeking companionship elsewhere became a coping mechanism for me. I started spending more time with mom friends and immersing myself in hobbies or volunteering at the school. While these activities were fulfilling, they also highlighted the void in my marriage. I found myself yearning for the connection and support that I wasn't getting at home. Everything wasn't his fault. Being a mom made me feel so overwhelmed, adding to depression and anxiety. These conditions made it hard for me to connect with my spouse, leading to further isolation. There were days when I felt trapped in my own mind, unable to reach out for support. Sometimes the kids were sick, the dishes needed to be done, the laundry also needed to be done, and I was just an anxious mess. This struggle with mental health only deepened my sense of loneliness. The physical symptoms of loneliness were also hard to ignore. I often felt fatigued and had trouble sleeping. The emotional stress took a toll on my health, leading to general feelings of malaise. There were days when I would wake up feeling exhausted, both physically and emotionally. I also lost interest in activities that I once enjoyed, both individually and as a couple. Things that used to bring me joy, like cooking together or going for walks, felt burdensome. This loss of interest was a clear sign of the growing emotional distance between us. Since I spent the day taking care of kids and he spent most of the time working, we had sexual disconnection as a result. There was no time to connect, or I was tired. The lack of intimacy became also a cause and a symptom of our loneliness. The lack of sexual intimacy was a clear sign of deeper emotional issues that we weren't addressing. It made me feel undesired and alone. The intimacy that was once a cornerstone of our relationship faded away, leaving a void. I had a friend whose spouse had an affair. Discovering her spouse's affair was devastating to her. The betrayal made her feel profoundly alone, and rebuilding trust seemed impossible at times. The emotional pain and sense of betrayal were overwhelming, contributing to a deep sense of isolation. There are so many causes of loneliness in marriage. Some reasons I didn't go in depth are immaturity, like how people spend money. If people have different spending habits and different hobbies, different preferences in general, family of origin interference, you end up feeling like you are alone as the other person is doing other things. Illness and addictions such as work, alcohol, and drugs can also lead people to be around someone yet feeling alone. For me, living with these causes of loneliness was incredibly hard, but acknowledging them was the first step towards my healing. Coping strategies. Now let's talk about coping strategies. The first and most crucial step was open communication. Encouraging honest and non-judgmental conversations helped rebuild our emotional intimacy. Spending quality time together, even if it was just a few minutes each day, strengthened our bond. Regularly sharing our thoughts and feelings started to rebuild our emotional intimacy. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary. Spending quality time together also made a big difference. We made a conscious effort to engage in shared hobbies and have date nights. Even simple things like ensuring we had time to talk each day strengthened our bond. I remember we started cooking together again, and those moments brought back some of the connection we had lost. Seeking professional help, like marriage counseling, provided a safe space to address our underlying issues. Therapy gave us the tools to improve our relationship dynamic and understand each other better. It was through counseling that we learned to navigate our conflicts and emotional disconnection. Addressing individual needs was also essential. Both of us ensured our emotional and mental health needs were met. This involved seeking individual therapy, engaging in self-care, and supporting each other's personal growth. It was important to remember that taking care of ourselves helped us take better care of our relationship. For my friend, rebuilding trust was a gradual process, especially after infidelity. It required transparency, consistency, and a lot of support. They had to work actively to rebuild what was broken, but over time, trust started to return. Understanding and addressing loneliness in marriage takes effort, patience, and often professional guidance. The truth is, loneliness in marriage is challenging, but by recognizing the signs and taking proactive steps, you can work towards a healthier, more fulfilling relationship. Yes, people don't talk about it, but it is happening. You don't have to be alone. I hope my story helps anyone going through something similar. You are not alone. Remember to be curious and get help. Please check out my other videos on loneliness and please subscribe to my channel.